Chris Owen. Chris Owens could come up to the stage via this way. He's going to give us a story about cystic fibrosis in his sons.
Good evening. Again, my name is Chris Owens. I am from Brunswick, Maryland, and my wife Jen and I have a 7-month-old son, Julian, that has cystic fibrosis. And I'd like to take a moment to give you our story. Around this time last year, during a routine monthly checkup at Jen's baby doctor, as I like to call it, she was asked if she would like to have some blood drawn to see if our baby would be susceptible to certain diseases such as cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, that sort of thing. And Jen's pretty tough, so giving some blood's no big thing to her. So she said, sure, why not? And of course, through that test, it came out that Jen was a carrier to have cystic fibrosis. So that prompted me to get tested, and of course, my test came back positive, and I was also a carrier for cystic fibrosis. So that prompted us to be referred to a genetic counselor who we met with, and we learned more about CF and went over our options for our next steps. We learned that because we are both carriers of cystic fibrosis, that we have a 25% chance of having a child with CF. Our options at that point were to wait for the baby to be born and then have it tested, or we could have an amniocentesis performed and find out probably within a week if our baby would have cystic fibrosis. The thought of waiting 4 more months was pretty nerve-wracking to us, so we decided to go ahead and have the procedure done. So the next week we had the procedure done, and we were told that we would find out within a week or so, by the first week of October, what the results were. And it came up through a casual conversation with our doctor that Jen and I actually shared the exact same birthday of October 4th, 1983. Their response was, wow, that's pretty neat, that's pretty interesting. Hey, maybe we'll get to call you on your birthday and give you some good news. So sure enough, as that birthday rolled around, we anxiously waited, and 4 o'clock came, and 5 o'clock came, and when we did not get a phone call, that's when I knew that our son, or our child to be, had cystic fibrosis. And sure enough, the next morning at about 10 o'clock, Jen received a phone call from the doctor's office to confirm that yes, our baby did have cystic fibrosis. And we spent pretty much the rest of the day with a few tears and a whole lot of researching cystic fibrosis online. The next morning, the sun rose again, and we came to terms with our new situation, and we decided that we were going to keep a positive mental attitude throughout this whole process. So a few days later, we met back with our genetic counselor to get a crash course in cystic fibrosis. And as the meeting got underway, the genetic counselor was going over all the genetic codes and the X's and the Y's and the Y's and the X's, and I sat there and I thought to myself, I thought, thinking back, 10th grade biology class, when the teacher's going over all this stuff, and I remember thinking, I'm never going to need to know this. Why should I pay attention right now? Why would I ever need to know this? Well, that was when I needed to know it, and pretty much everything went right over my head. But good thing for me, my wife Jen paid attention that day in class, and she was able to absorb all of the information. But one thing that we both understood at the end of our genetics lesson was our genetic counselor let it slip that our baby had an X and a Y chromosome, meaning that we were having a boy. Now, up until that point, we wanted to keep the gender of the baby a secret, if you will, or a surprise. And so, although we were a little disappointed to find out ahead of time, we were both really excited because we both wanted a boy. I wanted a boy to be able to teach it how to play sports and to teach it that the Redskins will eventually win a Super Bowl. And Jen was really excited to buy him cute shoes and style his hair into a little faux hawk. The genetic counselor also informed us that our baby had the mutations of Delta F508 and G551D. They explained that G551D was a very rare mutation that only affected about 4% of the cystic fibrosis community, and that there's a new drug in medical trials, Kalydeco, that once available would drastically reduce the effects of cystic fibrosis, which was great news, but we didn't really fully understand the significance at the time. We didn't realize how unlucky and lucky we were. From then we started researching more about cystic fibrosis on our own and becoming more and more involved in the CF community by participating in fundraising events. And at 6 o'clock in the morning of February 1st, about a week before our due date, Jen goes into labor. And the baby was delivered at 6:29 a.m. on February 22nd, which is 24 and a half hours of sleep-deprived labor. So while I was waiting for the baby to be born, I was sitting there on Facebook, of course, and I see a post from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation that on January 31st, Kalydeco had been approved for children ages 6 and up. And I remember reading that and just smiling. It just made me feel good, made me feel warm inside. And it was because that was the first time that we had hope. Hope that we were going to be able to thrive with cystic fibrosis. Hope that we were going to be able to provide our son Julian with the life that he deserves. So within the first week of him being born, we took him down to Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. for his first doctor's visit. We met with our doctor, our cystic fibrosis nurse, our cystic fibrosis nutritionist, our cystic fibrosis physical therapist, our cystic fibrosis social worker. And there we were given directions on how to give enzymes, how to give breathing treatments, how to give chest PT, when to give enzymes, when to give breathing treatments, when to give chest PT, which was all a very overwhelming experience. Because for Jen and I, not only were we trying to learn how to be parents for the first time, we're now trying to learn how to care for a CF patient. So at first we had regular doctor visits every week and every 2 weeks, and now they've been extended to every month. And so I'm happy to report that Julian has had good health for his first 7 months. When I was asked to speak tonight and give our cystic fibrosis story, I didn't want to just tell our story. I wanted to think of some great theme or some great message to give to everybody. So the more I thought about it, I thought about who was my audience, who was I going to be speaking to tonight. And then I realized it came to me that the message tonight is very, very simple. And that is thank you. There's a long way to go in the fight against cystic fibrosis, but we've also came a long way as well. Because of all of your efforts in this room tonight, everyone here has been directly responsible for the achievements in the cystic fibrosis community. From day one, we've had answers to our questions. Not always the answers that we were looking for, but we've had answers. We've had help, and we've had guidance. Because of your support, we have hope as a family. Hope that our son and our family will be able to live every day to its fullest. So on behalf of my son Julian, my family, and myself, we say thank you. As you can see, my son is my life. Thank you all for helping to save my life.
Chris Owens, everyone.